ওকে, এনভায়রনমেন্টাল ইম্প্যাক্ট অ্যাসেসমেন্ট বা ইআই এর মধ্যে যেটা আছে সেটা হচ্ছে রেশনাল, এবং তার সাথে এখানে সিএল এর মধ্যে যেটা আছে, দ্য কোর্স ইজ ডিজাইন টু ফোকাস অন দ্য হিউম্যান অ্যান্ড দ্য ন্যাচারাল ইনফ্লুয়েন্স অন দ্য environment and the impact on the environmental process. It provides an overview of the principle, procedure, methods, and applications of the environmental impact assessment and modeling. The needs of an environmental impact assessment and monitoring is the CLO of this course. Then, first of all, is the environmental impact assessment EIA. EIA is the assessment of the beneficial and adverse changes in environmental resources resulting from proposed project. So, EIA is the assessment of beneficial and adverse changes in environmental resources resulting from proposed project, and aims and objectives of EIA to assess the natural intensity and duration of impact of proposed development projects, to promote the local community and the public participation, to promote the local community and the public participations in the EIA process of a project, to promote the social and cultural consideration, in the project design, to provide a methodology for prevention, and mitigation of expected impacts, to provide methodology for prevention and mitigation of the expected impacts due to the presence of a project. Then the EIA process comprises of the four sequential elements. Number one is the identification. Identification of all the possible positive and negative impacts of the natural and human environment resulting from a proposed project. Number two is the evaluation of the assessment, which includes the quantifications of the identified impacts with respect to a common base and with respect to impacts from the other project action. Number three is the preparation of the mitigation plan. By implementing the plan will reduce the potentially significant negative impacts of a project to acceptable levels. Then number four is the EIA process may also include a monitoring plan to observe a performance of the mitigation plan for protections of the environment from the degradation, to review the environmental changes during the mitigation plan implementation and operation of the project closely. Then importance of the environmental parameters. All the environmental parameters influenced by the project are not of equal importance. The importance of a parameter varies from country to country, and depending on the environmental concerns of the country. In Bangladesh, flood, employment, agriculture, fisheries, etc. carry more importance than many others. The parameters related to the the parameters related to the infrastructure project had been given different values based on the privileging the environmental concern in Bangladesh, and represented as follows. All the environmental parameters influenced by the project are not of equal importance. The importance of a parameter varies from country to country depending on the environmental concerns of the country. In Bangladesh, flood, environment, agriculture, fisheries, etc. carry more importance than any other. Than parameters related to the infrastructure project have been given different values based on the privileging environmental concern in Bangladesh, and represented as this. And this is the total process, the total important value of the environmental parameters. If we denote it with 100, then say third bracket is the parameter value, and total of the component value. Total of the component value is this, and if we zoom in this, first of all, the ecological parameter fisheries is 10, wildlife 3, forest 5, tree plantation 3, wetlands 4, eutrophication is 1, and this is the ecological parameters. This is the 25 is the parameter value, and the physiochemical parameters is 35. 2 is the erosion and siltation, 5 is the drainage and water logging, 6 is the regional hydrology and flooding, 6 is the flood control and drainage, then 5 is the soil characteristics of soil fertility, 3 is the groundwater table, then 3 is the soil water pollution, then pollution, then dust pollution and noise pollution. 3 is the obstructions to the wastewater flow. 40 is the human interest related parameters, health and nutrition. So 6, loss of the agricultural land site, and then employment opportunities, 8, commercial and the সার্ভিস ফ্যাসিলিটিস এটা হচ্ছে 6, নেভিগেশন অ্যান্ড ট্রান্সপোর্টেশন হচ্ছে 3, ইন্ডাস্ট্রিয়াল অ্যাক্টিভিটিস হচ্ছে 3, দেন ইরিগেশন ফ্যাসিলিটিস হচ্ছে 2, দেন হচ্ছে কি ল্যান্ড ওনারশিপ প্যাটার্নস 2, দেন ল্যান্ডস্কেপ ইজ 2, then what is the then what procedure is to be followed in the presence of EIA? Write down the procedural steps of a EIA report. Three approaches generally followed. Number one is the screening. First and simplest tier of the project evaluation will be from the environmental point of view. The screening is based on several criteria such as type of the project, its size and location. As per the Environmental Regulation 1997, screening procedure is to be followed according to this, and industries have to divide it into 4 categories. Number one is the green, orange A, orange B, and then is red. Then classification of the defined industry based on the impact and location according to the World Bank and Bangladesh government. So first of all is the green category. The following industries listed below should be included in the environmental clearance requirement. Should be introduced in the environmental clearance requirement, and the industries industries listed below may be located in the residential area. Industries listed below may be located in industrial area, and the moderately open space is desirable. Moderately open space is desirable. Then industries like to emit the unacceptable limit of the noise, smoke, bad odor in the commercial area is not permissible. Industries like to emit the unacceptable limit of the noise, smoke, bad odor in the commercial area is not permissible. Not objection certificate. No objection certificate from the local authorities. TV, radio manufacture and assembly, and টেলিফোনের মধ্যে যেটা আছে টেলিফোন অ্যাসেম্বলি, টয় হচ্ছে কি ম্যানুফ্যাকচার অ্যান্ড অ্যাসেম্বলি, দেন হচ্ছে বুক বাইন্ডিং, this all are the category. Then green category, this is then next is the orange A category. For this industry, industrialized and designed industry or moderately open space is desirable. For this industrialized or designed industrial area or moderately open space is desirable, and effluent discharge arrangement. Then industries like to emit the unacceptable limit of noise, smoke, bad odor in the commercial area is not permissible. Exact description of the raw materials and the exact descriptions of the raw materials and the manufactured product will be under this orange category. Then cattle farm below 10 animals in the city and the 20 in rural areas. Poultry is below 250 birds in city and 1000 in the rural areas. Shoe and leather goods, then plastic and rubber goods. Then orange B category. Then for orange B category, for this industries industrialized or designed in the industrialized areas or moderately open space is desirable. Orange B category, for this industries industrialized and designed industrial area or moderately open space is desirable. So industries like to emit the unacceptable limit of noise, smoke, bad odor in the commercial area is not permissible. Industries like to emit the unacceptable limit of noise, smoke, bad odor in commercial area is not permissible. Layout plan design of the effluent treatment plant. Layout plan design of the effluent treatment plant, PVC products, they are checking glass factory, jute mill. This will be under orange B category. So orange B category. So in orange B category, for this industries industrialized and designed industrial area or the moderately open space is desirable, and industries like to emit the unacceptable limit of noise, smoke, bad odor in commercial area is not permissible. And layout plan design of the effluent treatment plant, this is also under orange B category. And then PVC product, glass factory, jute mill, this also be in this category. Then orange B red category, for this industries industrialized or design industrial area or the moderately open space is desirable, and in industries likely to emit the unacceptable limit of noise, smoke, bad odor in commercial area is not permissible. And outline of the relocation and the rehabilitation plan where applicable, and emergency plan relating adverse environmental impact. Emergency plan relating adverse environmental impact. So what is this? For this industries industrialized and designed industrial area or moderately open space is desirable. Moderately open space is desirable, and industries like to emit the unacceptable limit of noise, smoke, bad odor in commercial area is not permissible. Outline of relocation rehabilitation plan where applicable. Emergency plan relating adverse environmental impact. Emergency plan relating adverse environmental impact. Leather processing. Next is the leather processing, formaldehyde, urea fertilizer, TSP fertilizer, power plant. Then paint polish and varnish, and enamel. So this is also under red category. Then initial environmental examination হচ্ছে কি IEE and industries and all industries and projects in the open B red categories have to be conduct IEE, which helps in understanding the potential extent of environmental changes, and in finding ways to mitigate by considering the available information, past experiences or standard operating practices. So understanding the potential extent of the environmental changes, and in finding the ways to mitigate by considering the available information, past experience or standard operating practice. The steps for conducting IE are collecting of baseline information in respect to the project, the environmental setting of the project, the site of the project, setting of boundaries of an setting of a boundary of an impact assessment, mitigation measurement, and environmental management plan by EPM or EPM, and in the event IE of the project or industry reveals the further investigation is to be carried out, then sponsor will have to carry out detailed EIA. So all the industries and the project in orange B and red categories have to conduct. Orange B and red category only should conduct the IE project, which helps in understanding the potential extent of environmental changes and in finding the finding the ways to mitigate the considering and available the information, past experience or standard operating practice. Then what is the steps of IE? Then first of all is the collections of baseline information in respect of the project and environmental setting of the project, the site of the project. Then setting of the boundaries of an IE impact assessment, then mitigation measurement, and then environmental management plan EPM, EMP. And in the event IE of the project or the industry reveals that the further investigation is to be carried out, then the sponsor will have to carry out a detailed IE. Then the structure of the IE, the following format is recommended for preparing the IE report. First of all is the introduction. Number two is the descriptions of the project, descriptions of the existing background environment around the project site, 1 kilometer radius, impact both construction and operation phase, mitigating measures, then also residual impact, monitoring program, summary and conclusion. Structure of the IE, the following format is recommended for preparing IE report. Introduction, descriptions of the project, description of the existing background environment around the project site, introduction, তারপরে হচ্ছে descriptions of the project, then there's description of the existing background environment around the project site, impacts, then both constructions and operational phases, mitigation measures, residual impact, monitoring program, summary and conclusion. Then detailed monitoring, environmental impact assessment, environmental impact assessment EIA. The detailed EIA study should be focused on addressing the issues which remain resolved in IE. The steps involved in EIA are as follows. Number one is the baseline studies. This is usually divided into two sections. Studies related to the project. The major studies factors are taken into consideration. A is the studies related to the project, respect to the local environment and its effect on setting up the project. Respect to the local environment and its effect on setting up the project. Then B is the raw materials, fuel, chemicals, including the informations of the storage facilities, C is the product and byproduct, storage and then transport. D is the manufacturing flow diagram, including process parameters like temperature, pressure, list of machineries and equipment, then quantities and characteristics of effluents, methods of different treatment and disposal, then details in veins and stacks, and requirement utilities. Then number one is the studies related to the project. respect to the local environment and its effect on in the setting of the project. Raw material, fuel, chemicals, including information of the storage facilities, product and byproduct, storage and transport. Product and byproduct, storage and transport, then manufacturing flow diagram, including the process parameters like temperature and pressure, list of the mechanics and equipment, list of the machinery, list of the machineries and equipment, then also quantities and characteristics of the effluent, and then methods of effluent treatment and disposal, then details of the vent and stacks and requirement utilities, then identification, a list of the impacts on environment from the projects, sources of the impacts such as emission, water consumption, wastewater generated, noise generated. So this can be the impacts. Number two is the evaluation. This will be determined whether the mitigation of pollution of the proposed project will be required, and it will be based on one or more following consideration: conformity with laws, regulations, and accepted standards; site selections with respect to protected sites; acceptability to the local community; severity of impacts; duration and frequency of the adverse effect; and then detailed environmental impact assessment, or EIA. So the detailed EIA study should be focused on addressing the issues which remain unsolved in IA, which was unsolved in IA should be on the detailed EIA. So the steps involved in the EIA as follows. First of all is the baseline studies, and this is usually divided into two parts. Number one is the study related to the project. The main following factors are to be taken in consideration: studies related to the project, respect to the local environment and its effect on the setting of the projects, local environment and its effect on setting of the project, and raw material, fuels, chemicals, including information of the storage facilities. Number C is the product and byproduct, storage and transport. The manufacturing flow diagram, including the process parameter like the temperature, pressure, list of the mechanics and equipment. F is the quantities and characteristics of the effluent. N is the quantities and characteristics of the effluent, methods of the effluent treatment and disposal, details in vein and stacks, and requirement utilities, requirement utilities, requirement utilities, then identification. Mm, then identification list of impacts on the environment from the project and sources of the sources of emission, water consumption, wastewater generated, noise generated. Evaluation, then evaluation is this will be determined whether whether the mitigation of the pollution of the proposed project will be required. It will be based on one or more following consideration: conformity with laws, regulations, and accepted standards; site selections with respect to project site; acceptability to the local community; severity of the impact; duration and frequency of the adverse effect. Then analysis of the alternatives. Analysis of the alternative is done to establish the preferred or most environmentally sound, financially feasible, and winning option for achieving the project objectives. For each alternative, the environmental cost should be quantified to the extent possible, and economic values attached where the feasible, and the basic for selected alternative stated. The analysis of the alternative should include a no project alternative. What is the mitigation measure? The objectives of the mitigation therefore are to be the find better alternatives and way to doing this, enhance the environmental and social benefits of a project, avoid, minimize, or remedy the adverse impacts, and ensure that residual adverse impacts are kept within the acceptable levels. Then environmental impacts and mitigation. The criteria issue resolved in I. Then issue related with the public perception, project location, design criteria, construction stage, operational stage, environmental laws and regulation, mitigation measures, benefit cost ratio, public opinion, residual impacts, and then environmental management plan by EMP, final design, equipment, method of construction, contract document, population control measures, reuse and recycling of the waste, schedule of the implementation, estimate of capital and operational cost, then management organization, personnel and resources, equipments, lab, etc. Then environmental monitoring programs, environmental quality monitoring, location, parameters, frequency, effluent and emission monitoring, air emissions, effluent emissions, solid waste emission, fuels and raw material monitoring, sulfur and ash contents in the fuels, metal contents in the ORIS, data presentation and the submissions of the reports, estimate of the annual cost, then summary cost and recommendations. Then the principles of different types of monitoring, activity. First of all, the baseline monitoring. A survey should be conducted on the basic environmental parameters in the area surrounding the proposed area before the construction begins, and subsequent monitoring can assess the changes in this parameter over time against baseline. Impact monitoring, the biophysical and the social economical, including the public health parameters within the project area, should be measured during the project construction and operational phases in order to detect the environmental changes which must have occurred as a result of the project implementation: air emission, dust, noise, water pollution, etc. Compliance monitoring. This form of the monitoring employs a periodic sampling method or continuous reading of a specific environmental quality indicator or pollution levels to ensure the project compliance with the recommended environmental project standard. Monitoring should be regular and performed over a long period of duration, and the interruptions in the monitoring may result in generating the insufficient data to draw the accurate conclusion concerning project impact. Concerning project impact, the structure of the EIA report. First of all, is the environmental base map covering 10-kilometer radius. Descriptions of the following features: land use, physical resources, air, water, soil, biological resources, including forests. Then economical development, socio-economic status, quality of life, environmentally sensible area. Then environmental impacts and mitigation issues related to the public perceptions, project location, design criteria, environmental laws and regulations, mitigating measures, benefit cost ratio, and the residual impacts. Then environmental management plan by EMP, or EMP, final design, equipment, method of construction, contract, document, population control measures, reuse and recycling of the waste, schedule of the implementation, and estimations of the capital and the operational cost, management organization, personnel, resources, equipment, lab, etc. Then environmental monitoring programs, environmental quality monitoring, location, parameter, frequency, effluent and in emission monitoring, air emissions, effluent emissions, solid waste emissions, fuels and raw material monitoring, sulfur and ash content in the fuels, metal content in the quarries. Data presentation and the submission of the reports, estimation of the annual cost, summary, conclusion and recommendation. And the importance of the environmental impact assessment, EIA. Through environmental impact assessment, project managers know which product need full screening to prevent any damage to the environment, helps to assess the potential impact relevant to the environmental legislation based on the legislative requirements, identifies the problems and helps through mitigation process in advance to anticipate the disasters likely to happen, protects the biodiversity environment by suggesting alternative safe project designs and methods, highlight the possible alternatives that are safer for the environment, and methods with less impact. EIA produces an environmental management plan. EIA produces an environmental management plan and summary for the non-tech general public. Then helps stakeholders in the decision making of whether to approve the project or not based on the finding after the assessment. To identify, evaluate and predict the environmental, economic and social impact of the new development activities, record and rate and the impact levels of the environment by proposed project, provides the information showing the environmental consequences before decision making.